but it begins with the right kind of people. If you remember back to when we started doing Lean Six Sigma projects, plant management, people in manufacturing.
Failure is because there's so much complexity to deal with.
The dog agrees strongly.
Right.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talks Series brought to you by AKFI, the Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG sustainability and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I'm the co-host of this talk series here with my another co-host, Manuel. Hello, Manuel.
Hello, Isabella.
And also our awesome guests here, Lee and Ray. Welcome, Lee and Ray. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, everyone.
Yeah, both Lee and Ray are on the executives. They're executives at the Vancouver Group, an international business performance consulting and professional services firm with presence in South Carolina, Seattle, San Francisco, correct me if I miss anything, Dallas, New York, Beijing, and Beijing as well, Galway, Ireland, and Miami, France. Did I miss any location?
That's pretty complete. Thank you.
Okay, good to know. And Lee serves in the executive positions in several corporations that drive improved business performance using technologies that include business innovation, digital transformation, project management, Internet of Things, and artificial intelligence. Very hot topics today. Lee is also the former director of the IEEE board of directors, and currently he's active in promoting the development of the Internet of Things through his participation in the IEEE Internet initiatives. And turning to Ray. Ray is a veteran business leader with over 35 years of executive engineering management and project management experience working in GE, the U.S. Air Force, and also as an independent consultant in innovation and digital transformation. And it seems like the current focus of Ray has been around the management and deployment of different technologies in various industries and business functions, including marketing, engineering, manufacturing, service, IT, and finance. Wow. Thank you both for being here. That was quite a bit background for me to introduce to everyone. Very impressive. Thank you for taking the time here.
Well, thank you, Isabella. As you can tell, we're both old, so we've both done a lot of things.
Time is fair. I'm young. I have a lot to learn. All right. Awesome. Well, to kick off the question, or I would say our conversation, we always like to hear from our guests about their overall understanding or, take on today's trends of digital transformation and the ESG field. So whoever is ready to start, feel free.
Well, I'll start it off and then I'll let Lee correct me. My perspective on digital transformation and ESG comes down to the word value. What's happening is that we are seeing a transformation of what constitutes value in an organization. And we're using digital technologies to help us with that. But it used to be value was just looking at what's going to hit the bottom line profit for the next quarter. Now, value is more than just the next quarter's profit. It still is that. But value now includes profit going well beyond just the next quarter. And in order to ensure that we're making value or creating value beyond the next quarter, we have to be looking at what we're doing to meet the needs of our customers. So now customers are much more important in that view of not just what takes care of them now, but what will take care of them long term. That also then leads us into things like sustainability. How do we sustain our customer base? How do we sustain our supplier base? How do we sustain ourselves so we can have long-term profits, not just short-term profits? It also gets us into looking at our impacts in the society. What are we doing to ensure that we're promoting personhood of everyone so that we have customers, so we have clients, so we have people to work with? Again, we want to make sure we're growing our client base, not depleting our client base. And the last point is with value, a key element of value is trust. In order to get trust, we need to have the governance there to show people that we really are doing what we say we're doing. Where it's not just all show, it's not just marketing hype, but they really can trust us, and that requires the governance behind what we're doing. So digital is the way we're transforming, but we're doing it in a way to promote environmental, societal, and governance issues. Lee, I'll let you add to that.
All right. I'll say much the same, but from a different perspective. I've been around long enough to see computerization from very small boxes on a person's desk or in a single room where we were computing just a handful of things. And then as the computing speed and the networks and the ability to write code expanded, the cost of computing has dropped dramatically. So that single application sitting on someone's desk suddenly expanded to an entire process line, and then to an entire manufacturing plant, and then to connected plants via the brand new network that allowed us to keep hierarchies of data such that we can coordinate activities across a manufacturing division, a company, all the way up to the enterprise level where we're trying to track production, quality, cost. So we now have a perfect storm of that. We can virtually afford to process information in real time across entire companies or even groups of companies at a low cost and at a rate of processing where we can make impact now rather than have to wait till the next shift of operation to find out, what do we do? Did we do okay? So Ray is right. Value is king, but also real-time processing of data such that we can surely impact large enterprises that now include a forest, a farm, a division of people, all sorts of things now that we can surely afford to do big projects with real-time information.
Interesting. Well, Noel must know much well on these topics. Yeah.
So linking your activities at IEEE, digital transformation, in your case, Ray, the organization, and also the Vincula and this combined experience, I will go a little bit deeper. And if we look at the enterprises of today, how can they successfully manage and implement digital transformation? Because the statistics are still showing that digital transformation has a fairly high failure rate in achieving the all objectives of a proper transformation. The failure rate is quoted sometimes to 70 to 80%.
Well, Manuel, I'm not sure what statistics you're looking at, but the ones I saw just last week had shown that digital transformation projects were now only failing at the level of 11%. They had been failing. By that I mean 11% passing, 89% failing. It had been 91% failing, so it's a tremendous improvement. It's just 89% failure right now. But it's obviously we're looking at major problems there, and a lot of that comes down to there's alignment issues. These are projects that there's complexity around them. It's a whole system that you're changing when you're looking at changing digital transformation. It's not like when Lee and I both have done manufacturing improvement process or projects where you go out on the shop floor, you replace one piece of equipment, and now the throughput or the quality at that workstation is better. And everybody's happy and we're cheering and it's great success. And we've made an incremental change. But we're now changing the entire system simultaneously. And as we're changing the entire system, the other elements of the system that connect to it are also changing. Suppliers, customers, the infrastructure. And so there's many moving parts, and the complexity just makes the project management on those incredibly difficult. That's where the challenge is coming in. It's an element of the failure is because there's so much complexity to deal with.
The dog agrees strongly.
Right.
So in this process of transformation, Lee, also you work like Ray with many executives, senior executives. And I think we should recognize that the transformation has to start and end with people, has to include business models changes, not only the difficult transformation of the processes and the evolution of the processes. What do the executives tell you, Lee?
Well, again, like Ray was saying, it begins with people, but it begins with the right kind of people. If you remember back to when we started doing Lean Six Sigma projects, plant management, people in manufacturing, even people back in the warehouse and the shipping dock were totally involved and at the same meetings. It was an entirely different environment from the way things were done before. Everybody had to learn something. Everybody had to practice something. Everybody had to do a real project using these new ideas, such that it was a total team, total plant project to make sure we were doing things right and measuring it statistically to be able to show that we did do it right. So yes, those kinds of ideas, those kinds of organization is now going into digital transformation projects because we have no choice. I'll give you a good example. Way back when computers first started rolling into manufacturing, people out on the process lines could look up and over and see these great big computer boxes being pushed down the hallway to the computer room. And their first thought was, wow, who are we going to replace with those boxes? And the answer was no, because the amount of information needed to do things right expanded, and we were smart enough to involve people who were touching the process and touching the product because they knew what was right, what was wrong, and what should be corrected.
Very good. Isabella, do you have a follow-up question or I continue?
Feel free. I like the flow. I think it's going very well. Yes.
Well, actually, Lee touched a little bit on your book when he talks about the digital mind. You know, these people watching these large machines being fit into the data center, and then how people mindset has to change. And also, I think with the mindset, the cultural change has to happen, and we see executives actually taking a role not only of technical and business managers, but also cultural managers. If you have some experience in that area, Ray and Lee, maybe you share with us.
Sure. I don't see them as being culture managers or business managers as much as they have been in the past. Their role, that management role, really changes to one of being coaches, mentors, equippers. The decision making is going to be happening at the front lines. And some of the decision making will be made by the machines, by the technology. And the troubleshooting, the direction, the engaging elements of the decision making is going to be with the frontline employees, the frontline people in the organization, the ones actually touching customers or touching the process. That's where decision making is happening. And the role of managers now becomes one of ensuring that our people are trained well, are coached well, have the right data and information to make good decisions. And the managers will be looking long term. What do we need to do to transform our business model? How do we change the way we create value? What new value elements are out there for us to capture? How do we reposition ourselves? So they're not looking at running the business anymore. They're looking at steering the business and coaching the employees. That's how I see the big change in management. And I'm seeing that in some of the organizations I work with. Not all of them, but in some of them, I'm seeing that change.
Maybe shifting a little bit gears, but I know that Lee is also creating a number of magazines, including ESG, sustainability, digital transformation, metaverse. So what kind of lessons we can learn from these articles that you keep up so well with, and what can we learn from there?
I think what we can learn is that nothing is simple anymore. Today is World Population Day. We now have 8 billion people. Everything is much more complex. There's more people either with information or without information, and on and on and on, such that when a problem arises, it grows exponentially in a matter of days. It doesn't take months or years. It's everybody's issue probably by the end of next week. So, yes, we've all got to talk better together. We've all got to communicate better, because talk is not communicating, and we have to be able to react and move the resources from here to there to keep 8 billion people fed, employed, educated, healthy, you name it. And it takes digital transformation all through the sensor at the bottom of the scale and up to the enterprise layer that's receiving the information and has a perspective of what to balance where.
Very, very interesting. In sort of moving more toward the sustainability, sometimes we talk about corporations moving from sustainable business to resilient business and to longevity. And we see actually the financing industry with green bonds, with ESG bonds and ESG ETFs and financing vehicles, supporting the industry to transform. So in this transformation process, do you have some recommendations for, let's play a role for a second, but then if I'm a CEO or I'm in a position of a board of directors in charge with maybe digital transformation, what kind of messages we should take in order to understand this deep transformation that you, Ray, and Lee have spoken about?
Well, I'm glad, Manuel, you phrased the question that way. At first, I thought you were going to ask me which bonds we should be purchasing, and I'm not the person to tell you where to place your money on the stock market.
Thank you.
So as we think about that CEO or that leadership team and how they use digital transformation to also pursue these other initiatives, I want to go back to where I started. I'll look at where is value being created and think of value in a broad fashion. Think of value across the spectrum. Sustainable value. What does sustainability mean? What does resilience mean? And what is the value that we can create to build that? And by that I mean it's not just what are our products, but how do we ensure our processes are going to be sustainable, are going to be resilient? We've seen all the disruption in supply chains over the last year or two. Resilient processes are able to absorb those and keep going because they've got backups, they've got options, they've got the ability to use multiple suppliers, multiple sources, and keep things going. And so that's where value is being created in the organization. Being more resilient, being more sustainable is creating long-term value for the organization. So that's where they should be looking to use their digital transformation initiatives, is how do I insulate myself from the short-term variation and make myself viable no matter what happens going forward.
Corporations, go ahead.
I'm going to ask Lee the same question. I'll let Lee finish just for you guys to process while Lee's talking. I want to ask if you have to narrow or be more specific about resilience, what does it mean? Can you give us an example? Sorry, Lee, go ahead. That's the following question. So you can answering this one first and then the following.
Resilience in my mind is the ability to manage and do it in a repeated fashion such that the product you make today is the same high quality as the product you made yesterday. That means you've got to be in absolute control of your supply chain. Your people have to be educated and understand the process and the procedures they're expected to work with and through. But at the end of the day, there are these financial people and managers who want to know about risk. What am I doing that I can afford to do, not do, or manage better? It's a big picture. It's like this evolving circular economy that we're all expected to make product and then bring the product back at the end of use by the customer or application and be able to reinvent a purpose for the material that we just manufactured perhaps 5 years earlier. So very complex, and we need to manage risk and quality and cost, keep people happy, and do it with 8 billion people.
Thank you, Lee, for combining your answer on both questions in the presentation. That's really great. Isabella, I'm back to you.
Yes. Thank you. I want to ask Lee, what are the key factors in those complex situations that you mentioned? Yes, we need to maybe produce 5 years in advance. How do we determine that? What are the considerations when we making those decisions?
Well, in the past, we would just make things based on the ideas and drawings of one or two people. But in this complex world today, we're making parts here in the Southeast that may go into a product being assembled in Beijing or Seattle or France or somewhere in the world. So the concept of standards, we used to manage standards by simply having a similar English or metric measurement system. Now it goes far beyond that. And the standards that we're working on, and oh, by the way, we're working on a digital transformation framework, which will be a part of the IEEE standards organization. So we have to make sure the pieces fit. We need to make sure that the materials and the quality of the pieces are of a tight tolerance such that things will work together under different situations and also environments. What I build in a plant here in South Carolina, our environment is entirely different than what you see being built in Vietnam or Singapore. So we've got to have universal quality, universal measurements, universal ways of doing things, and the information created so we can mix, match, and measure.
Not to make the things more complicated, but also we have to have standards of labor, eliminating child labor, for example, eliminating the depletion of natural resources to a level that is unsustainable, and so on. So the complexity of the standard world seems to encompass now a much larger scope of operations and control than it was in the past. In the past, you just look at your company, your production, and make sure that the output it's on time, it's at the right quality and the right cost.
Many factors that Henry Ford didn't have to worry about.
That's true, right? Just make all of them black cars and move the assembly line. Don't stop it, right? The rule was do not stop the assembly line. Lee, a little bit more in-depth question about the IEEE, and you mentioned the role in standards, but what specifically is the organization working currently on digital transformation, ESG, and so on?
Well, it's a broad question. When you say digital transformation, you're talking about information science. You're talking about various components that have to measure, activate things, move things. You've got, actionable devices such as motors and conveyors and pumps. And so all these things are bound together by electrical and mechanical and information standards. So what Ray and I are doing, we're defining a framework for how all this works together, because we don't know what the technology will be in 2 years, and they're not going to wait on us to write about it after it's done. So we're building the roads, we're building the means of understanding what's going to happen, such that it will all be able to be plugged together. And Ray, you may want to jump on that and add some more things.
Well, you're spot on about that, Lee. The standard that you and I are working on is a framework standard. And from that framework standard, we can then be pointing out to all of the standards associated with specific devices, things like pumps or generators or motors, things like IoT sensors, networks. All of those are going to be blockchain. All of those are going to be covered with their own standard on that specific technology. And we're looking at something that's a broader framework, which is a way of trying to capture the complexity idea that we've mentioned several times. That's all part of looking at the bigger picture. Isabella, you had asked me earlier about resiliency, and I just want to come back to that a second. One of the ways to answer the resiliency question is that we design for our product to be used both now and in the future, and for our processes to operate both now and in the future. And Lee had mentioned that it was all about risk, and risk is the primary driver in doing your resiliency analysis. We have to anticipate what could happen to our supply chain, to our factories, to our processes. Now, what could happen to our supplier, our customers, businesses in the future that would change the way that they would be using our product or would need our product for. One of my clients is in the construction industry over in Europe, and right now we're designing construction products for disassembly, not for the assembly. But now there's standards around, you have to be able at the end of life of that building to take it all apart and reuse all that stuff to build another building somewhere else. So it's kind of the Lego idea that we can take the Legos apart and reuse them. And we have to design this so that when it comes time to disassemble a building, it's not bring in the bulldozers and wrecking balls, but rather take it apart, use the stuff in other places. It's a whole new design concept, but that's part of the resiliency aspect, thinking that longer life cycle now instead of just the immediate point of sale.
Reusable, a recycle system. Just curious for both of you, what are the average age groups that you're working with on a daily basis now?
Well, it depends upon when I engage with the company, where I'm engaging with them. In some cases, I'm engaging with senior executives. And of course, in that case, you're probably looking at people 50s, 60s. But I'm also doing work right now. One of my major clients I'm doing work with is looking at how are we retraining the manufacturing workers, the manufacturing employees. And there, we're talking about people that some of them are recent high school graduates or they have an associate's degree. So we're talking people in their 20s up through people in their 50s. And so it's looking at that whole spectrum of the people out there in the shop floor. How do we work with them? How do we help them transform their skills, their abilities to be productive in a digitally transformed environment? So it's all across the map, I guess is what I'm saying.
You know, once upon a time, people would take a job in a plant and basically work at or with a machine for their whole career. That doesn't happen anymore. Things change. Technology forces machines and the process to evolve over time. So somebody who's going to work for a 40-year career will have to learn new things, possibly every 2 to 5 years, in order to keep up with what that company does, maintain their own value to that company, and keep the career such that you're paid based on what you're learning new and better, rather than the same old task being done every day, every minute for 40 years. I went to a manufacturing plant, and this plant made socks. And I talked to a lady who was in front of a machine that did all the weaving and fabric spinning. And I said, "How long have you worked at this?" And she said, 40 years. So we're in a different world. Nothing lasts for 40 years. Nothing lasts now more than
4 years.
3 years. Yeah. Right.
Well, that repeated task, as you mentioned, doing the same thing, we're going to have, that's what the machines are going to be doing. The machines are going to be doing the same thing. What the people are going to be doing is keeping those machines up to date. We haven't yet used the phrase mass customization, but that's a phrase that says that every product, everything we make will be different for each customer, each use, each application. That's again where the people are going to be engaging, saying, oh, this time we need to do this. But once we've defined it, then the machines can make it. But we're going to be understanding what the customer wants, what the customer needs, and redefining the products or services that we're providing. That's where the people have to be engaged. And that's a different skill set than watching that machine make socks for 40 years.
Very different.
We keep saying the same word over and over, that word being manufacturing. Manufacturing, just like farming, occupies a tiny percentage of the workforce compared to 100 years ago, even 50 years ago. So work today comes under a lot of different umbrellas, and people are more processing information or making decisions than simply, well, like my example, making socks for 40 years. So we have to evolve because it takes less people in many cases to do work. And we've got 8 billion people to feed.
I'm sorry, Manuel. I successfully turned this conversation to my book topic. It's far and far from ESG and closer to the technology and humans. Thank you both for the valuable input.
We need ESG to make sure we know how well we did, and whether we can afford to do it tomorrow.
I think Ray started with a very, very good comment, a very, very good insight when he says, let's think about value. And when you think about value, value is for humans. Enterprises, companies are organizations of humans, governments, states, and so on. So maybe we come close to the closing remarks, but and I would like to talk for another hour at least here. But if we look at the value, is digital transformation, is sustainability, ESG, opening the door to a new perspective or new perspectives on value. And maybe Ray and Lee have a short, a follow up on this question of value and how they connect as a connector.
I do think that the digital transformation is allowing us to rethink what is value, to rethink where does the value come and what value do we provide in the total life cycle of a product or service. And organizations are able now, because of connecting with their supply chain, working on platforms, they can decide what is the value they want to really focus on, they want to specialize in, that they want to become the experts at, and letting other people do other elements of the value. That's part of rethinking the value chain, is to decide where do you need to be, where do you want your organization to be positioned in the value chain, so you're adding value and not losing value because you're doing a lot of things inefficiently that others could do better. And so that's, again, that's all part of that digital transformation. We become more specialized in the areas that we can add tremendous value, and looking at that not only near term, but as we've said several times, looking at the full life cycle. Where can we add value throughout that life cycle? Lee, I'll give you the last word.
I'll go back to the employee. They're becoming more educated. They're being required to become more educated, and they've got to have skills of not only mechanics and electric, but they've got to have skills in math, science. It will be a different workforce, very much so in 5 years. And we've got to make sure our kids, our schools are doing the right things to give us people that are worth hiring. Because if they're not worth hiring, again, it's gonna, what do we do? So it's going to involve, schools from, K through 12, community college, university, to produce the people that can truly produce to the value that raised companies are going to require, and at the rate and quality that is needed.
Wonderful.
Well, before we go to the final remarks, and as I said, I would like to talk for another hour, but before we go to the final remarks, I want to congratulate you, Isabella, because tomorrow is the big day when you're launching the Digital
Thank
Mind
you.
of Tomorrow. So turning the page tomorrow, we have to start to think more about our relationship with the digital universe.
Thank you. Half of our talk has been thinking about that. So I'm very happy to hear everything Lee and Ray was sharing. Thank you for sharing.
So
bring us back sometime, and we'll go to the next level.
The deep level.
That will be sooner than later.
Definitely, you will hear from me. Thank you. Thank you both for taking this time. As Manuel mentioned, we could go on for this for like days, hours and days. But thank you all for tuning in today, taking the time during the middle of the week. Thank you both, Lee and Ray, for taking the time, sharing your valuable insights. And it's just scratching the surface. And I can't wait to hear more, right? More in the deep level. So everyone make sure to tune in every week for a new episode of Actionable ESG Talks Series. You will gain new perspectives on how to mitigate risks and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. Until next week. Goodbye for now from Isabella and our co-host Manuel and our awesome guests Lee and Ray. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.